I'm responding to comments, but we're having a discussion and the discussion is going to be about music. The comments that I'm responding to are the comments that are on the video I posted where I composed using magic squares. If you haven't seen that video, you can check it out. So I thought I'd respond to those comments because some interesting discussions can be had. So I'll just start with the comments one after another. Okay, so the first one. He started out intrigued, then gave up at "it doesn't really matter. If the pitches don't matter, what is the whole point of composing?" What you are referring to is when I'm making the precompositional square, so when I'm looking at the magic square and I'm putting pitches into the square and I'm saying it doesn't really matter what pitches you put in, because precomposition isn't composition, there's a difference. And there is the risk with, I suppose, with contemporary classical composers to fetishize precompositional material, valuing the precomposition above the composition itself. Ultimately, it doesn't matter how you get the pitches. What does matter is how you compose with the pitches. It's what you do with it that matters, and how you structure that material, and that is the process of composing, and that is what distinguishes composing from generating material, which anybody can do. You don't have to compose to do that. You can just put any random pitches in a square or a circle, or just write them on a page and then just pick them however you want. So I hope that answers your question. In the video, incidentally, I do make a big distinction between those two things, generating material and composing with it. And in that case, when you get to the composing part, yes, pitches should have a purpose or a function. There should be a point to it, because otherwise, why bother? Next comment. Right. These get interesting as well, but there's the same sort of area of discussion that needs to be had. Real composition comes from the heart, from inspiration. There is no mathematical formula or squares. So basically, right, do you use harmony and counterpoint? Do you use scales, chords, modes? Do you know that the tuning system is mathematically put together? All these dictate how you hear and write music. And what happened was, at some point during the development of Western classical music, some people thought, this is very restrictive because we are bound to write the same thing over and over again. We are just going to use the same sorts of chords, harmonies. We're not going to escape from this restricted sound world. And they said, well, let's go against that and let's do atonality. Let's look at serialism. You've still got rules in it because it's kind of another restriction. You have to follow the rules of serialism then. And using a square to get material and make lines of music from it, it's no more restrictive than using a scale or a chord to write music. It's just a way to sort of get you to rethink things and explore sounds you wouldn't have done otherwise. So composing from the heart, what is that? Is it adhering to predefined concepts that you have been trained to listen to? Or is it exploring an open space of frequency freely without caring about what it may allude to? It's impossible to do things randomly because everything you do is going to be defined by what you already know, even subconsciously. We don't realise that the harmony and counterpoint that we follow and feel like we're expressing ourselves through, we don't realise that it's this rigid mathematical system that we stick within. I think that's a really interesting comment that's been said there, and I think it needs to be said. And it's a very interesting comment to have in the Contemporary Composers Collective group. The problem with using another composer's method is it's another composer's method and not yours. The result of the magic square is okay for educational purposes, but it results in music constructed on intellectualized patterns and has absolutely no musical feeling or originality, authenticity. Okay, the magic square is no more restrictive than scales and chords. It's just another way of exploring frequency and picking out things that you might put in a composition. You can get durations and pitches that are generated and it makes a specific line, but you can alter that. You are the composer. None of this is to say you're not composing anymore. I mean, I think you can write something original and authentic with a magic square if you're genuinely composing, not if you are fetishizing the pre-compositional material. It's music that requires a listener to think, to comprehend it, not feel. Good art elicits an emotional response from an audience without requiring them to understand complex prefabbed architecture. They don't need to understand the magic square when they listen to it. It's like a palette. It's like using a palette and you're just dipping into your different paints. Just because you're using a specifically rigid amount of colour doesn't mean that you're not going to express and paint something that is you. It's not like the palette dictates the painting. That's why serialism and atonal schools are dead now. not for academic small groups that still cling to them under the illusion of experimental art. Avant Garde music, experimental music, new music, contemporary classical music, whatever you want to call it. There tends to only be a small group of people that like it when you compare that small group to the whole world. Yes, but you could say that about a lot of different music as well. You need to just shift your perspective and accept that people were trying to do something new, but then in trying to recreate that sense of newness, ended up repeating something that had gone before, and then they ended up getting stuck in a rut. Although I do think music is evolving continually, and like music now is different from, say, what it was like in the mid-2000s. But for the most of the world who prefer music that moves them in some emotional manner, that certainly won't come from a magic square anymore. You wouldn't be able to tell that a piece of music had been written using a magic square. You could write a pop song using a magic square. It's just a starting point to generate some material. If you have writer's block, or if you want to come up with something new that you haven't done before, if you want to say maybe get over your own preconceived ideas about how things should be, just use something. It's like a palette of notes and rhythms that you can just repeat and pick and change and whatever. You don't have to formulate the magic square correctly. So, thank you for watching this video. I think it's been a very interesting discussion actually, and the main focus of the video has been about composition and precomposition and how you distinguish precomposition from composition and what is composing exactly. We've tackled debates about tonality and atonality and whether music elicits an emotional response. We talked about the difference between thinking about music and thinking when you're listening to music and then feeling music. Which reminds me, people are talking about separating your head from your heart when you write music. It's a very rigid scientific way to think about things. I don't know why you're doing that. It is possible to listen and think about music without that being bad. You don't have to just zone out and feel. There's no rules. Well, this has been interesting. Please do comment again if you have any more questions or comments or any of this stuff. I think it's really useful for me. It helps me sort of formulate them into logical discussions, because I know a lot of starting out students have these thoughts when they approach composing and thinking for themselves and exploring sound in new ways. They all have these thoughts of like, I want to do what I've always known, I want to just follow harmony and counterpoint, this new thing isn't music. I welcome all these discussions. I think they're really interesting. Thanks. Bye for now.